How did one of the most influential video game franchises in history, once featuring Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Neymar on its cover, along with licenses from the UEFA Champions League and Copa Libertadores, end up practically surrendering the entire market to its competition? The simple answer is Konami, the company behind the game. But if you're interested in a detailed breakdown, stay tuned as we go over the fall of Pro Evolution Soccer. To start with some background, many of us are familiar with PES, but how did it once become the top soccer game? This game series originated with Konami, a Japanese company, and its first installment wasn't initially known as PES. The debut was released in 1994 under the title International Superstar Soccer, or ISS for short, and was developed by Konami's Osaka studio. It was a fairly basic game, launched for the Super Nintendo, but for its era, it introduced standout features that set it apart, like distinct player hairstyles and heights, making players not just identical NPCs. Although Konami lacked official licenses, meaning player names were fictional, you could often tell who they were by appearance and team. Seeing the success of this approach, Konami decided to create another soccer game for the next generation console, the PlayStation. In 1995, they released Winning 11, a title which may sound familiar as it would eventually be rebranded as PES. However, this game was developed by a different studio, Konami Tokyo. It's somewhat baffling that Konami had two soccer franchises running at the same time, each made by a different team. In other words, Winning 11, or Goalstorm as it was known outside Japan, continued alongside ISS, International Superstar Soccer. The latter saw several releases, including versions like ISS 98 and ISS 2000, which were exclusive to the Nintendo 64. Later on, ISS 1, 2, and 3 were released for the PlayStation 2, with the third installment coming out in 2003. This marked the end of this particular branch of the series, as it was discontinued afterward and ultimately faded into obscurity, overshadowed by the rise of PES. But returning to Winning 11, the predecessor to PES, it received a second release in Winning 11 97. This is where the name confusion really started. In Europe, this game was called Goalstorm in 97, while in North America, it went by International Superstar Soccer Pro, essentially creating a separate franchise from ISS. However, in the US, they decided to reuse the same name, a choice likely due to communication gaps between Konami's Tokyo and Osaka studios. Tokyo handled the PlayStation releases, while Osaka managed the Nintendo versions. In Japan, each game had distinct titles and covers, so even your grandmother could easily tell them apart if she was buying you a Christmas gift. But the real confusion began when these games were released worldwide, with American and European teams choosing names as they saw fit. For instance, when Winning 11-3 launched in Japan, the West labeled it International Superstar Soccer Pro 98. Yet, that same year, ISS 98 also came out for the Nintendo 64, meaning there were now two different games with nearly the same name. This naming chaos extended even in Japan. Look at the Winning 11 series. First came Winning 11, then Winning 11 97 2 years later, and finally Winning 11-3 the next year. Jumping from 97 to 3 is already confusing, but the disorder didn't stop there. In 1999, Winning 11-4 was released, known as ISS Pro Evolution in Europe and North America. It didn't seem too problematic until Winning 11 started being called Pro Evolution Soccer in the West, and on the PlayStation 2, Konami released 3 different games titled International Superstar Soccer. This setup made it appear as though ISS Pro Evolution was a mashup of two franchises, though it was actually just Winning 11-4. In contrast, FIFA had kept things simple since 1994, just labeling each new release with the following year. With the PlayStation 2's release, Konami Tokyo launched Winning 11-5, which was officially titled Pro Evolution Soccer 1 in the West. This marked the debut of PES in November 2001, elevating the franchise significantly thanks to the graphic power of the new console generation. Player animations and expressions reached a new level, and for the first time, you could recognize the players' faces, giving virtual athletes an appearance more like their real-life counterparts. Although not perfect, they had a close resemblance. This is where it's worth pausing to compare with FIFA, as FIFA 2002 by Electronic Arts was PES's main rival. At this point, FIFA was clearly superior in almost every way, with EA dominating the PlayStation 1 era, with titles that outperformed Konami's games in graphics, cutscenes, sound, animations, and official licenses. Yet, where PES excelled was in the fun of the gameplay itself, a unique element that FIFA couldn't quite match. The following year, PS2 was released, and although it still lacked enough licenses to display real team names, players, and logos, Konami poured their budget into creating one of the best intros in sports video games, set to We Will Rock You by Queen, a true cinematic moment. These details linger, becoming unforgettable. They're the moments you look back on years later when you remember playing Pro Evolution Soccer 2 as an 8-year-old, loading up the game to see a cinematic of a muddy penalty kick while Queen's song played in the background. From then on, Konami consistently released annual PES titles like 3, 4, and 5, each with slight improvements in mechanics and interface. They even introduced PES management, where players could take on the role of a manager, directing their team, a groundbreaking feature for the franchise at that time. Finally, in April 2006, Konami released its crowning achievement, the definitive soccer video game that remains widely played to this day, arguably more than FIFA 23. I'm talking about PES 6. This game saw the Japanese developers behind the franchise elevate it to an art form. After so many continuous releases, PES 6 struck the perfect balance between realism and arcade style, with refined gameplay, enhanced interfaces, and beautiful designs. This release brought an abundance of new licenses, including national teams for the first time, and launched in the midst of the 2006 World Cup, a huge appeal since players could lead Argentina to the title, a comforting fantasy after witnessing their real-life elimination to Germany in penalties. The timing of PES 6 played a big part in its success, and it featured some of the most iconic players of the era: Zidane, Ronaldinho, Cafu, Rooney, Ronaldo, Riquelme, Kaká, as well as young Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. Jumping into a match even in 2023 is like stepping back to simpler times, to when you could just pop a disc into the console, load the menu, and jump right into any mode you wanted. Compare that to today, where launching a new FIFA or eFootball title requires waiting for patches to install, navigating countless in-game notifications, and being urged to spend money. With PES 6, you're transported to a time before games were monetized as services. Back then, 3 button presses were all it took to start playing it. Even the menu of PES 6 reflects this simplicity. It's clean, straightforward, and aesthetically satisfying in a way later titles never recaptured. Yes, PES 6 had it all. You could jump into a quick match, select United to take on a powerful Betis, or dive into Master League mode, leading your team to every available title and building your dream roster. While some of the character designs were quirky, like Riquelme's unusually dark skin tone or Aguero's odd resemblance to an Asian player, you could train to perfect your controls, or compete in tournament modes ranging from the Reebok Cup to the glorious International Cup, which mirrored real-life tournaments like the World Cup, Euro Cup, and Copa America. PES 6 also allowed you to save replays of highlight moments, giving you a chance to revisit thrilling goals or watch memorable matches over and over. The editing mode was another standout feature, granting complete freedom to customize every player and even create new ones. You could rename Messi, give him new accessories, switch his dominant foot, or even make him look entirely different, whatever you wanted. The customization options weren't limited to players alone. PES 6 also gave players the power to create or edit their own teams, choosing everything from jersey colors to team crests and even their home stadium. But the crown jewel was undoubtedly the PES shop. By playing matches, players earned points they could trade in for all sorts of unique accessories. In the shop, Konami creatively worked around licensing by including famous players under different names, like Forgive, standing in for Valderrama, or Bueton, as an obvious wink to Veron. This licensing workaround even applied to classic teams, so you could unlock legendary squads like Italy, Holland, Brazil, and Argentina, with unlicensed player versions like Amalgani, clearly meant to be Maradona, or Palm, obviously a stand-in for Pele. And then came the wildest options. Players could buy hilariously random accessories for their avatars, like animal masks, dinosaur costumes, or penguin suits. At some point, someone at Konami decided a match between players dressed as penguins facing opponents riding velociraptors was an idea worth implementing, and whoever suggested that deserved a bonus. This quirky aspect underscored the main difference between PES and FIFA at the time. FIFA focused on being more serious and realistic, aiming for high fidelity, while PES leaned toward an arcade-like experience emphasizing fun. Konami didn't let licensing restrictions hold them back, instead providing options to customize player names and jersey numbers, allowing fans to approximate real teams, a stark contrast between EA's approach and Konami's creativity in making even dinosaurs a part of the game. The PES community embraced this customization to the fullest. Nearly 2 decades after its release, PES 6 is still kept alive through fan-made patches, which add everything from legendary teams throughout history to the current roster of Argentine leagues. Today, it remains one of the most played sports games worldwide, backed by a community that cherishes it not just for nostalgia, but for its unique depth and personalization, qualities no high-end graphics or modern gameplay can replace. However, this freedom came with quirks. Sometimes, players would unknowingly buy a PES game that had been modified. I remember purchasing PES 2011 only to find it patched with the entire Argentine league and a soundtrack full of Argentine rock songs. I ended up spending years thinking I'm Leaving was an official PS track. In the end, PS 6 still stands as the ultimate soccer game, a historic peak in soccer video gaming. But ironically, Konami's quest for excellence with PS 6 reached such a high level that maintaining or surpassing it in future releases became impossible. Having achieved near perfection with PS 6, Konami faced the inevitable challenge. After creating such an iconic title, any attempts at innovation that followed would struggle to meet the standard it set, signaling the eventual decline of the series. After PS 6, Konami released PS 2008, which marked the start of a naming convention that aligned the titles with their release year. Despite its name, PS 6 wasn't called that because of its release date in 2006. It was simply the sixth installment in a series that had started with PS1 in 2001 and had kept pace since then. The 2008 edition boasted one of the most iconic covers in the series' history and marked the first PS release for the PlayStation 3. However, it wasn't the first to reach next-gen consoles. PS6 had already made it onto Xbox 360, though it was essentially the same as the PS2 and PC versions with just slightly upgraded graphics. With the added power of new consoles, Konami began refining game mechanics and improving the AI, although these upgrades were exclusive to the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions. Meanwhile, the PS2 versions continued as simple reskins of PS6, limited by the console's hardware. Then, in PS 2009, Konami solidified its hold on the sports gaming market by securing the exclusive UEFA Champions League license, letting players experience the Champions League tournament with any European team. This release also introduced the Be a Legend mode, a groundbreaking feature that let players create a custom character and guide them from their rookie season to retirement. This immersive, character-driven mode was leagues ahead of FIFA's career mode, helping PES maintain its edge. Subsequent installments brought even more licensing expansions, adding the Europa League in 2010 and the Copa Libertadores in 2011. Finally, PES 2013 arrived, widely considered the second best title in the series, only narrowly surpassed by PS 6. PS 2013 had a soundtrack that resonated deeply with fans, featuring tracks like I Sue Chip and music from Imagine Dragons, adding to the game's nostalgic appeal. I remember it vividly. This was the first PES to have the entire Spanish league licensed, including every team, player, and stadium. The graphics and gameplay of PES 2013 were undoubtedly the peak of its generation, with an extensive selection of licenses from the Champions League and Europa League to South American tournaments like the Copa Libertadores and the Brasileirão. It was the last truly excellent game from Konami, and here's a theory worth considering. The quality of a PES game can be gauged by its cover. In its early days, PS covers were minimalistic, just a silhouette and the title, like with PS3, which featured a referee, a nod to the evolving quality of the series. Then came PES 4, the first to feature two players, with Thierry Henry and Francesco Totti sharing the cover alongside the iconic referee. PES 5 continued this trend, placing Henry and John Terry face-to-face in an intense cover shot. Then, PES 6 showcased Adriano mid-goal, capturing the explosive energy of that era. Each successive cover became more epic, with PS 2008 featuring Cristiano Ronaldo and Michael Owen, while PS 2009 through 2011 spotlighted Messi, and PS 2012 and PS 2013 once again celebrated Ronaldo. These covers didn't just mark an evolution in branding, they captured the growing influence and reputation of the PS series as it secured its legacy among soccer games. PES 2013, featuring Cristiano Ronaldo and Neymar on the cover, was iconic, but it was also the start of PS's decline, which became evident by 2014. One of the issues was the lackluster cover art. In the European version, they oddly showcased the Champions League logo rather than any players, which felt meaningless and seemed to signal that they were relying heavily on the tournament's licensing to attract attention. The Latin American editions fared even worse, with region-specific covers. In Argentina, for example, the top players were displayed, but in other parts of Latin America, the cover featured players from the 2013 Copa Libertadores. Riquelme's version was particularly memorable, yet the design was so amateurish that it looked like someone who'd just picked up graphic design from YouTube tutorials had put it together. It felt like the once polished brand was deteriorating. This decline largely stemmed from the limitations of PES's aging game engine, especially as Konami began to see FIFA advancing with newer technology. With the release of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in 2013, it was clear that PES needed to modernize. Konami chose to shift to the Fox engine, the same engine behind Metal Gear Solid, another Konami franchise that would later face its own issues. The Fox engine offered a leap forward with new physics, updated graphics, and enhanced animations, aligning with the demands of the new console generation. However, the game's rushed release led to an unstable launch, which left fans disappointed. This rapid transition from a well-established engine to a new one without the necessary refinement was a significant factor in what became the downfall of PES, as it struggled to match the quality and fluidity players had come to expect. The gameplay in PES had noticeably worsened, with player faces appearing awkward and unfinished. It was clear that the new Fox engine lacked a few months of necessary polish. Despite Konami's dominance of the PlayStation 2 era, where PES had reigned as the definitive sports video game, things shifted dramatically with the arrival of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Electronic Arts began significantly improving FIFA, and the addition of official licenses meant that by the end of the 7th console generation, with the release of FIFA 14, FIFA was clearly superior to PES for the first time in years. The transition to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One further cemented this shift. FIFA regained substantial control over the football gaming market, overtaking PES. Superior graphics, extensive licenses, and especially the rise of online gaming modes allowed EA to outshine Konami. Ultimate Team and the player card system gave FIFA a massive advantage, engaging fans in a way that PES hadn't anticipated. It wasn't until PES 2016 that Konami finally mastered the Fox engine and produced a solid game with a great cover, but by then, it was too late. FIFA had already filled the gap Konami had left and capitalized on the growing demand for online gameplay. By PES 2017, Konami began neglecting PC players entirely, offering a version that was simply a PlayStation 3 port, vastly inferior to the PlayStation 4 version both in gameplay and graphics. This made playing PES on PC a frustrating experience, while FIFA 17 on PC offered a polished alternative. For PC gamers, even older versions of PES seemed better than the current releases, as the quality of PES on that platform had declined so much. Meanwhile, FIFA surged ahead, leaving PES struggling to keep pace. In 2020, PES Football was released, marking what would essentially be the end of the legendary franchise, shifting towards a game-as-a-service model. Much like FIFA, this approach aimed to make the game more service-oriented. However, unlike Konami, EA has been somewhat effective in implementing this model. The following year, PES 2021 didn't launch in the usual format. Instead, the franchise rebranded to eFootball, with the game itself being more of a seasonal update titled Pro Evolution Soccer 2021 Season Update. By moving away from annual releases, Konami adopted a service model that would add new content periodically instead of releasing a full new game each year. In theory, this decision was a good one. Creating a continuously updated football game could be beneficial, especially in a market where buying a new game each year, usually with minor changes, can feel wasteful. A football game as a constantly refreshed service with roster updates and new features makes sense. However, Konami's execution left much to be desired. The moment you enter eFootball, the interface bombards you with notifications, and the design resembles a mobile game, which reflects where most of the player base is now. Licenses are minimal, single-player options are nearly non-existent, and everything revolves around online play, pressuring players to spend on microtransactions for players or accessories. Classic modes like Master League are gone, though Konami hinted at reintroducing it in future updates, likely with additional costs. Today, PES holds little relevance due to multiple factors, including industry shifts and Konami's decisions. Although it may seem like a disaster now, there's a glimmer of hope that eFootball could eventually be refined, much like how it took years for PES to reach its pinnacle or for Konami to perfect the Fox engine. However, if it's going to meet the high standards of its past, it will need significant time and effort to re-establish itself as a quality football game. I don't know. I want to think that because every day, today, they continue to update them constantly. It's not that they took it out and left it abandoned. But well, it turns out that the state in which it is currently located is not the best, but I don't rule out that in the future, about 2 or 3 years from now, they will release an update to improve it